to GenFriends. I'm your host, Cheri Hudson Passey from Carolina Girl Genealogy. And here's our great panel for tonight. We've got Dan back.
Hey.
Dan Earl, our family history guy, is back. And, you know, I keep telling him, you guys have been asking, where's Dan? Where's Dan? Well, here's Dan. He's back. We've got Melissa Barker, our archive lady. We always love that Melissa's here. Melissa's like here all the time, unless unless you've got to talk or something, which we excuse you for. So we're so grateful. And Jenny Hawran's here, and she's always here. So that's great. I love that. Love that. Love that. We've got this core group and everybody else is busy. And I guess some of us are like, yeah, I can be there on a Monday night, right?
That's right.
So, thank you. Thank you for being here, Jenny. And she, if you want to find her blog is like Herding Cats Genealogy. So it's really fun. And we've got Mary Kircher Roddy, who we are always grateful that she can be here too, because that woman is busy. This is a busy woman. We're all busy. We're all busy. So I'm grateful that you're all here. But Mary does MKR genealogy and her applied genealogy. Hey, you took your little thing down, and I wouldn't care if you kept it up. Applied Genealogy Institute, where you can go, and we've talked about that before, and get some great skill building courses on that. So we are happy to be together tonight. And Dan, the man, is going to take over. And hey, have you guys ever used the Internet Archive? It is a wonderful, wonderful place to go and find things. I've used it before for directories, all sorts of things. So Dan is doing double duty tonight. He's our panelist that everybody's been wanting back. And he is going to be like our guest as he talks about the Internet Archive. So Dan, tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Internet Archive is really, really cool. It's underutilized, I think, by genealogists. Not everybody knows about it. There is, just a ton of stuff on there that you would not think would be on there. Most of the time people think like, oh yeah, I can just go find old websites on there, and that's true, you can. Yeah. But they also have just tons of old documents, just this super eclectic mix of just stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I can talk about some of my favorite stuff that's on there,
sure,
if you guys want to chime in.
Yeah, so. I've used it for directories. I've used it for state laws, finding out the different laws in my state. I've been able to do that. Who else has used it for things?
I've used it all the time in the archives where I work. We recently, in the last couple of years, we had a Victrola that was actually donated to us. And with that Victrola was a large collection of 78s from the 1940s music. And I thought, and I looked at those and I thought, the Victrola is not in working condition. So I looked at some of the names of the music and I said, I bet you Internet Archive has it. So I was able to go on Internet Archive and hear the music.
Oh, I love it.
On those 78s. Cool. So that was pretty cool.
What about you, Jenny?
I was saying that I use it for yearbooks that you can't find anywhere else. I've hit the jackpot on that, and it's been very, very helpful. So I love it for that.
That's great. Mary?
I use the Wayback Machine on it for, I have a lot of presentations that I've been giving for years. And it's like they had this really, really, really good website for this concept, whatever. And it doesn't work anymore. So a lot of my links tend to be, you can find this on Internet Archives because the material is still good. You just can't find it anymore live. So I use it a lot for that. And then also one thing and maybe you'll talk about it, Dan, I was surprised to find they have newspapers. So like the Napa County newspaper isn't available on most websites. It's not on the California Digital Newspaper Collection. It's not on newspapers.com or Genealogy Bank, but it's on Internet Archive. So if you're not thinking of that as another place to look for newspapers, you should be.
Thank you, Mary, because I'm looking for an obituary and I haven't looked there. I need to go look there. Thanks for that reminder. So Dan, tell us all about what else you can find and your favorite place.
Oh goodness. So there is you can find old maps on there. So National Geological Survey maps. They go back into the 70s, I believe, some of the older maps. And the cool thing is
some of my ancestors, ancient maps, the 70s,
super ancient, right? I mean, for those of us born in the 80s, that does seem ancient. Um,
Are those born
all,
those born in the
all of you
60s?
were,
I also had to laugh that you said geological, and I heard genealogical, which every person that I say genealogical to hears
here's
geological.
geological.
Yes.
Yeah. So they're the survey maps that the National Geological Survey did. And so if you had ancestors that were in the anywhere really, those would show like any extant buildings that were there at the time.
Yeah.
And so like for some of my ancestors that worked in silver mines in Colorado,
Oh,
the
nice.
buildings are no longer there in 2024, but I can go back to these older maps from the 70s and 80s and see structures on those maps that no longer exist, right? Which is pretty cool to be able to do that. So if I'm planning a road trip, I might go and it just looks like a pretty cool valley, but then those maps will help me kind of visualize where different things would have been in places like Ruby City and these other ghost towns that just don't exist anymore, that have just been erased because of time, you know.
Mhm.
So those are really cool. Melissa talked a little bit about some of the music that they have on there. They have, 78s. They've got, I mean, just old cylinder recordings from back when,
Mhm.
instead of just being a disc, it was a cylinder.
Yeah.
They have old radio programs, which
Fun.
doesn't really seem like it's going to help you do any ascendancy research. But in terms of getting the next generation of genealogists interested and finding things to do with your nieces and nephews or grandkids that isn't looking at a slide deck,
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
Internet Archive is super valuable because you can pull up old radio programs, you can find not necessarily old TV shows, but old videos and sometimes commercials and stuff they'll have up on there. They have MS-DOS games and things like that. That includes the original version of Oregon Trail
Oh,
that
wow.
I played as a kid in school. So if you want your nieces and nephews and grandkids to die of dysentery, this is a great way to do that. We've done that as a family for like a family night where we'll
Oh,
just, because some of my
fun.
ancestors, or not my ancestors, but my wife's ancestors followed those migration trails
Uh-huh.
out west. And so this is a great way for us to have an activity as a family
Yes.
and then go back and talk
Yeah.
about those
Yes.
ancestors. And it makes it fun, it makes it a little bit more real from the
Mhm.
have to like hunt for elk and things like that. Then they run out of food and they have to make those decisions as they leave Independence. Are they going to be a doctor so they don't die of dysentery, but they have no like marketable skills when it comes to fixing their wagon? Are they going to be a carpenter and like they all die of cholera? What's the balance, and so they have to figure
Yeah.
that out. And so
That's a
we've done it
great
as a family.
idea.
Yeah,
I love
it's a
that.
great just kind of fun thing to do. And that's the thing. There's just so much on the Internet Archive that you can really tailor that. So if you have regular family nights and things like that you do with your family, or even irregular family nights, or just where you're gathering, nieces and nephews or
Mhm.
grandkids together, this is a great tool to be able to use to kind of get them thinking about family history and genealogy without being like, all right, guys, let's get out the pedigree charts. This is going to be awesome, right? Because I can guarantee you there's not like well, there probably is. It's very rare that there's 12 and 13-year-olds that would get excited about that, right?
Yeah, very
But
true.
they will get excited about playing an old video game or listening
Yeah.
to a radio program or watching an old show. They've got some old movies on there that are no longer under copyright, that are in public domain, including the original Night of the Living Dead. So that was not they the director did not renew the copyright, and so if you want to watch the original Night of the Living Dead, that's on there. Manos, The Hands of Fate, which has been routinely voted the worst movie that has ever been made. And it is an agonizing film to watch. And it is not great. But if you want to like ruin someone's day, you could like say, hey, come on over, let's watch this old movie. It's just, there's so many resources. Um, Another thing that we haven't touched on is their books, right? So the Internet Archive of all things is actually a library. Like it's a real library in the state of California. And by real, I mean, it's like the state of California recognizes it as a library.
Okay.
And they've actually worked with places like the Boston Public Library, University of Michigan, a variety of different traditional repositories to digitize their collections and make those available for people across the world for free. And that's the coolest thing about the Internet Archive is it's all free. There's not going to be a paywall like on every other genealogy website except for Family Search. There's not going to be a thing where you're like, oh, click here, just hey, this subscription, do this, hey, you know.
Yeah.
They're not going to be begging you for money. They're not going to be doing any of those things. It's all free. There's some things that you'll need to create a free account to access. Some of the books that they have that are more recent, that are good resources but are out of print, you do have to have a free account to allow you to check out that book for a certain period of time, which is fantastic. I mean, it's like having an extra library card, and then you can check it out. You can have it sent to your Kindle. You can, I mean, if you use a Kindle e-reader or whatever e-reader you use, they have it in all the formats. And then you can just do that, and you can just read stuff that you want to read instead of, 50 shades of whatever. You can actually read something that's good.
Mary, you were
yeah, so I want to talk about those books because the ones that you can borrow, and they let you borrow them for an hour or some other amount of time. Sometimes that feature goes away on that book. I had a wonderful book on county histories, the Bibliography of American County History by Philby, which I would use all the time, and I would just get it off the Internet Archive. And last time I tried to do it, it's not available anymore. So I had to go out and buy the darn book. Just be aware that and I don't know why it was there before, and sometimes it's not, but lots of times, records are available on Family Search.
That's right.
And then they're
That's right.
not.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Yeah, just be aware.
Contract
And
issues.
Yeah, contract issues. Those books that are out of copyright, they have available on there that are scanned. Many of those you can download as PDFs, both full color and black and white. So however you want to handle that, you can do that. You can actually download it for any e-reader format. So if you want to just, sit at the beach and just flip through a city directory, you can put a bunch of those on your Kindle and just,
that's what I do when I go to the beach.
Exactly. I mean, who doesn't, right? I mean,
Right.
slap on that SPF 100 so that you don't get a skosh of a suntan, sit underneath a big umbrella and just roll through city directories, right? And then
I'll
make it
take a
back to
good
your
county
cruise ship.
history.
You'll take a good county
Right.
history, yeah.
And they do have a lot of those too, which is awesome. They have county histories. They have a lot of, along with those county histories, a lot of times they would publish atlases, and those atlases are available as well. Gazetteers, I mean, just all kinds of just really cool stuff, right? I mean, so it's, when I teach about this, I tell everybody to get an egg timer, and set it for 30 minutes,
Right.
to save your marriage, because otherwise you will get lost in this, and you're like, at some point, I'm sure, like, your spouse would just slip divorce papers under the door because they haven't seen you in months because you're still looking at the Internet Archive. And so I just set that egg timer for 30 minutes, and I just go find my wife and just say, hey, how's it going? Good. And then I just go back and then set that egg timer for another 30 minutes, so she knows I'm still alive and I still care. And but it's just so much stuff. I mean, it's just like it is the candy store for genealogists.
Oh, I like
You're
that.
talking about the
and you
digitized
just-
books. Not only there are digitized
Mhm.
books of just like genealogy books or reference books, but there's books that are published by state government. There's also magazines, all kinds of magazines that are on there. There's catalogs on there.
Yes, I've looked at the catalogs, which are so much fun. 'cause
Old
it gives-
catalogs, yes.
Yeah, it kind of gives you a visual of how people lived,
Yep.
It's really fun. Yeah.
I actually did it. I used it for research for a novel that I was writing, in which some characters were at the natural, or the Field Museum in Chicago in the 1940s. I was able to pull up the brochure and guide for that exact year on the Internet Archive. And so I could visually see what all the displays were, because it's changed over the last, however
Yeah.
many years.
Yeah.
And so I can go in and see that they didn't have those dinosaurs on display. They had this other thing. They had this here. And so
Yeah.
as I'm writing, I can describe what they were seeing, and it's going to be different from what people would see today, but it's going to be historically accurate. And
Right.
so
Right.
even, for just filling out like what your ancestors' day-to-day life would have been like, looking at those catalogs, looking at,
Mhm.
just the things that were around them, you're going to be able to really kind of see their world in a different lens because of the Internet Archive that you wouldn't be able
Right.
to otherwise.
Another thing that I've been able to find on there are little pamphlets and descriptions about different occupations. That's been a lot of fun to find too. So, sometimes you can look at a census record and see, they did this and you're like, what on earth was that? Especially I've got a lot of people that worked in the mills. I have no idea what that job was, but I've been able to find some occupation pamphlets on there too, to be able to help me with those descriptions. So, it's like the list never ends of the things you can find. Yeah, Mary?
Yeah.
There's a movie that I found on Internet Archive, just about a minute long, that is of three blacksmiths working. And I think it's
Oh.
1895 or 1905.
Mhm.
And so you can see what they're wearing. You can see
Nice.
the tools they're using,
Yes.
the pace of it. And it's really fun because they, hammer, 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 hammer. And then somebody grabs a bottle and they pass it around, and I'm sure it's water.
I'm sure it is too.
Yeah. And then they put it back down, and then, and they've heated it up again now. So you can really see the way they work. And if you've got a blacksmith ancestor,
Sure.
Yeah.
that's just really a cool thing to be able to visualize that.
Yeah.
One thing I found too was war news reels from wartime, like World War
Mhm.
II. When you go to the movies during World War II
Yeah.
time, they had the news reels and they were playing the news of the war. Well, those are on Internet Archive. A lot of those are. Also, government films. I don't know about you
Yeah.
guys, but I'm old enough to remember when I was in school, they used to show us some of these government films about all kinds, about hygiene, about all kinds.
Yes.
They're on there. So if you want to be
Oh, that's too
nostalgic and
funny.
go and see those.
Relive your
Well,
childhood.
and Melissa, that's a great resource for teachers too. So for those of
Sure.
us that are classroom teachers,
Yeah.
and when I'm teaching about that period of history, especially when we're talking about like the Cold War, the duck and cover with the turtle,
Yes.
that guy, like, because I remember that just as a little kid, like, because I was in kindergarten, first grade at the very, very tail end of the Cold War, and we had to still do some of those like duck and cover things,
Mhm.
which they don't have to do now. Now they just have to do active shooter drills and
Yeah.
things like that
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
our generation never had to do. And so it's good to pull that in, and they can watch that, and we'll practice what they did, and say, now, do you think this is going to help?
Yeah.
No. And it's like, why would they do this? Well, it's easier to identify the bodies. That's exactly right. If you're where you're supposed to be and your teacher has a seating chart that's on file, it's going to be way easier to identify the body
Okay,
than it
that was
otherwise would
morbid.
be. Well, I mean,
That's
that's what I
true
teach. I
though.
Yeah.
teach older students, so we
Don't
can be a
tell
little
your
bit more morbid.
kindergartners
It's not
that.
like, yeah, no, if you're a third grade teacher, don't go there. But you can still kind of have fun, and you can watch the videos, and they're very
Yeah.
catchy. The government did a great job writing jingles back then,
Sure.
that were memorable, and just being able to pull that resource, that historical resource, into the
Yeah.
classroom is super cool.
Yeah.
And then they can compare it to what do we do now?
Yeah,
Why is this different?
exactly.
What do you think your kids are going to be worried about in school? Like, aliens teleporting in, because that's what's going to happen in 20 years. I mean, just whatever. And they can just be crazy and think about whatever. And so they can see that progression of there's always something
Yep.
that we're worried about in the
Mhm.
school system. And we can kind of follow that through time, right? And so before the Cold War, it was
Great
worried
idea.
about the Irish moving into your neighborhood, right? And then just that progression, right, through time.
Well, they
It's
also
a
have
real good
old
idea.
television shows. We talked about those, but they
Yeah.
also have podcasts. I mean, we think a
Ah,
podcast is a recent thing, but
yeah.
podcasts have been going on for a long time. So they have archived podcasts. And
Wow.
this is just not United States centric. There's other countries like India, other countries in Europe, libraries in Europe. Dan, I don't know if what you said you had done a presentation on this. Did it deal with how this information got onto the Internet Archive? I was under the understanding that it was contributing repositories, libraries, archives, and things that contribute this to this. So it's not, so not everything is on there, but those that are contributing
Yeah.
their material.
Correct. Yeah. And things will change. There'll be collections that are on there that won't be. And so it's probably worth the effort to you know, retain something instead of just relying on them always being there.
Right.
And so
It's like
yeah, the
anything on
collections
the
will change
internet.
over
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Exactly.
exactly.
I'm looking at some of the from the front page. I'm looking at some of the categories. There's social media videos. I mean, you're talking about, you think it's old stuff. Well, I mean, social media videos is recent. They actually have sermons and religious materials. And then there's one called Grateful Dead, and it's the band Grateful Dead. There's 17,399 items under that particular category.
It is
Wow.
every concert that they perform that was recorded is available either for streaming or for download if it hasn't been released. So if you're a
Wow.
Grateful Dead fan, or if you want to just, you know, listen to the Grateful Dead while you're making your dead grateful, like this is, you know, if you're into irony, then that's available for you. So
Oh God.
I
They
happen to
had
be
a
a Grateful
house in
Dead.
the town I grew up in. That was the Grateful Dead house on
Oh.
Lincoln,
That's
on the
funny.
way home from school. Talking about the front page though, I did want to say, pay attention to when you're looking at it, because you can search metadata and you can search text contents and you get an
Mhm.
entirely different
That's
set
true.
of results. And so if, you know, as a user, you want to play around with that, because you
Mhm.
might
Yeah.
search metadata and not find anything you're looking
Yeah.
for, and you've passed by a whole trove of
Yes.
great stuff. So
There is
And if
also,
you,
so there's also, I'm looking, which I have not looked at this, is JSTOR. It says JSTOR early journal content, 452,000 items.
Yeah.
Now I know JSTOR, I mean, you're allowed a free account for, you can read so many articles. So I'm
Mhm.
wondering if this is all free. I haven't looked at it. So
Yeah, I don't know if it's different through Internet Archive. I
yeah,
think it's the same, but I'm not sure.
interesting.
yeah,
of
I'm
course I'm
not sure
playing.
with JSTOR just because
Go ahead.
I get an account through my school district, so it's a little bit
Mhm.
different for me. So
Mhm.
but one thing that you can do if you create your free account, which I highly recommend that everybody
Yes.
does, you can actually save favorites on there. So you can like
Ah,
save stuff.
Uh-huh.
So that
yes,
way you don't have to go back and like, how did I search for that again? You can just save it as a
exactly.
favorite and it's there
Yeah.
because we all know how our memory is.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
If you don't remember, it's not good.
And nobody wants to go back and search again. It's a waste of time. So use the favorites. Exactly. Exactly. It's such a, I mean, I agree with you. You can get sucked in and just,
Yeah.
oh, look, there's that. Even if you don't need it for your research, you start going, oh, there's that. Oh, that's cool. Now look at that. That's cool. And you just, like you said, you know, use your egg timer.
Yeah.
You get sucked in. But it's a lot of great fun stuff. And that's what's so cool about it, is it's so much fun. And like we said, a lot of people don't even know it's there.
How long
There's
is it? Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know the history of it. Who started it? I mean, it's I don't know, Dan, if you know that. I don't.
Yeah. So it's started by Cale Brewster in the 90s
Mhm.
when he realized that, man, there's a lot of cool stuff on the internet. Somebody ought to archive all this. And so it started off just as what today is the Wayback Machine part of it, where it
Mhm.
just would send out a web crawler and just pull in and take basically screenshots of
Yes.
websites, right? And then would save that. And it's become over time this great repository of other information from the world. And eventually, I mean, its goal is pretty lofty, and that's to like capture all the knowledge in the world and make it available to everyone for free. Like that's, I mean, that's a
That's not
pretty,
much.
yeah, it's a pretty lofty goal, right? And they have, and you'd think like, okay, they're based in California, but they have backup copies throughout the world. So if you're worried about California sliding off into the Pacific, like they've got backup copies of everything, but they've got something like, I mean, a few trillion terabytes of information that's on there. It's an immense amount of data that they have on there, and they add to it every single day. So if you searched yesterday for something, literally like millions of points of data have been added since then. Even if you looked before you had your sandwich for lunch, what you're looking for now could be on there just based off of the rate at which things
Wow.
get added, right? I mean, it's just an immense amount of data. There's just tons of people that are working on it. If you have stuff that you want to contribute, you can contribute it. As long as it's clean copyright, you have the copyright, or it is out of, it is out in the public domain. If you have things, you can upload them there that would be of general interest. If you like, I've got a box just over here of photos that I'm working on digitizing. That's not going to be something that they would want on there. But if I had, a history of a church that was written by one of my ancestors, I could scan that, and as long as it's clean copyright, right? Like it's either in the public domain or my ancestor wrote it and they're now deceased and I'm a direct descendant and I can do this, right? I can scan it and put it up there, which is really kind of cool that it's not just limited to this super like macro historic data that's super important to everyone. It can be really micro historic, which is really, really exciting for those of us that are genealogists, that love history, that teach history. And it's just really cool to be able to drill down to that kind of micro historic level of things. Or even if you had an ancestor that kept a journal and you have clear copyright of that journal, I can't stress that enough. Otherwise, Judy Russell will come to your house and yell at you. As long as, I'm sorry, Judy, if that creates a lot of travel burden for you, but like, if you have clear copyright, then you can digitize that and put that up there for other people to read, because they may mention somebody that lived in the town that could search for that. So if you're putting in the metadata for that, you put in like the town, the county, all that kind of stuff. So if people are searching for this sort of overarching metadata of the town that their ancestor lived in, the county that they lived in, or whatever, surnames, you can put all that stuff as metadata, which is the hashtag searchable stuff.
Right.
Then you're good to go. I mean,
I
how
didn't know
cool
you
is
could
that,
do that.
right?
That's
Like it's just
very
super.
cool.
Well, they have, you're talking
And so
about
again,
books.
it's not going to be the repository for all of your stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
We're talking about books, and of course they've digitized a lot of books, so they've received a lot of digitized books, but there's also a catalog called Books on Microfilm.
Oh,
And so if you go, but this is stuff from the 16 and 1700s
nice.
that has been microfilmed books. So there's one called Primitive Cookery or the Kitchen Garden Displayed.
Oh, I love that.
And it's from the 1700s. These are books from 1580, 1691. I mean, so yeah, I mean that kind of stuff is just
that
there
is
for
going
free.
down the rabbit hole, but how fun.
Yeah. If you're looking for, history or, I'm not sure where you'll find your ancestor mentioned, but these books are out there. And a lot of times we're looking for that historical content.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's just, who can find books from the 15 and 1600s, but they're there.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. That's really cool.
I'm not getting anything done tonight. I
I
can
know,
already
that's what
tell.
I was just thinking. When we're done, I know where I'm going, what I'm doing, except for I can't. I got a pack to go on a trip, and so does Dan. So I guess we can't. But
Doesn't Reclaim the Records put all their stuff there that they've I thought they used Internet Archive or
Yeah, for like
records.
those New York vital records and stuff.
Right,
I'm
so-
pretty sure you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, like there's the only thing that I have not been able to do or find on the Internet Archive is a way to order pizza, so I don't have to leave the room when I'm searching the Internet Archive. So if they can add that feature, if they can partner with Domino's or Little Caesars or something, where you just click a button and they just bring a hot and ready, like it pings your location and they just a person brings it to you, like that would be ideal,
Yeah.
Other
We
than
were
that,
talking about these repositories contributing this information. Well, when you're on that front page and you see all the little icons and things in the catalog, there's actual universities and archives and stuff that have their own icon. And you can click on that, especially like this one. This is the San Francisco Public Library. I'm looking at it, and they've got 14,000 items on here. And so you can go there if you're looking for something location specific.
Yeah.
And look and see what they have. They've got their city directories, all kinds of neat stuff.
Yeah.
They have a magazine that looks like, it's called Pacific Marine Review. So building and engineering news, all kinds of wonderful. Yeah.
And
Education
a lot of
forever.
those university libraries, they're older books, the stuff that they don't want
Right.
18, 19, 20-year-olds that have just gotten off of a bender, like handling for class, those have been digitized and put up on the Internet Archive so they can tell Chad, like, all right, Chad, like, go back to your dorm room and just go to the Internet Archive and the book that you're looking for, that this rare, priceless, irreplaceable book that your frat buddy could throw up on is going to be right there on the Internet Archive for you. So we don't have to worry about that.
Good
So I'm looking at
explanation.
one now called the Spring Valley Water Tap Records.
Oh, wow.
And this is
Oh, speaking of that,
from,
I found tax records on there too. I
yeah,
have
yeah.
found tax records on there too.
I found the ledger for a general store in this small town in North Carolina on there. Like
Oh, wow.
that's how
Yeah.
ridiculous this place is. Like it's
Yeah.
just it is Disneyland for genealogists. It's
It really,
just so
really
much
is, yeah.
stuff, and like you can just find these little things that just are just amazing little nuggets of cool stuff, you know, and or you can just skim over the surface and just say, this isn't for me, right? Or the more you dig in, the more you're going to
Yeah.
find, and the more cool stuff that there's going to be. And again, all for free. So
And
That's
I'm
what's
looking
so
at the
amazing.
same database, San Francisco Public Library, and talking about interesting things. They have a digitized 1950 version of Beauty and the Beast children's book, and right next to that they have the Police and Peace Officers Journal of the State of California.
Hey,
So it's,
you know what? Look at things like that because
Yeah.
my dad was the rebel in the 50s with the cigarette pack, all that kind of stuff. And I found a book in a regular library, not on this one, but I'm just saying, look for those kind of things because he had mentioned a particular police officer he dealt with a lot. And this police officer is mentioned in the book and the years that he served and all this kind of stuff. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness, that's the guy that arrested my dad. So, you never know what you're gonna find. And that book is probably on Internet Archive somewhere. So, but so funny that you mentioned that.
And I
So
think too, I know I've talked to some repositories that contribute to there, and like Dan was just saying, these are all pretty old reference materials, and a lot of libraries are getting rid of their reference materials, but
Mhm.
some of these repositories are actually digitizing them before they
Mhm.
toss them, and they're
Yes.
ending up on Internet Archive. And so if they only have the only copy
Yes.
or one copy of only a few, thankfully, they're digitizing it and putting on Internet Archive. So you may be able to go to their library and get it off the shelf, but it's here.
Yeah, exactly. And if you can't travel to go get it off the shelf.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great way to research and not have to leave your house. And I
Dan, do you
agree.
have any tips on searching?
Oh gosh.
How to drill down?
yeah, start broad and then work your way down, right?
Okay.
Like and so like if I was looking for something, like if I was looking for say stuff for Charlotte, Michigan, right, which is not Charlotte, Michigan, Charlotte, Michigan, which is the county seat for Eaton County, Michigan. I mean, Michigan's a little too broad, but I would just search for stuff in Eaton County because that's
Mhm.
going to pull up your county histories, your county gazetteers, county atlases. I
Newspapers.
mean, just
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, just anything that's going to come up. And then it's also hopefully if people are putting the metadata in well, it's also going to pull up that it's in Charlotte or whatever instead of Eaton
Right.
Rapids or
Right.
Olivet or wherever. But then that allows so like the broader you can be geographically. Um, Sometimes we'll get frustrated if we get too specific and we have our blinders on, we'll lose out on a lot
Mhm.
of really cool
That's
stuff
true.
because our ancestors they weren't just locked into the little
Yeah.
village or town that they lived in. They would go to these other
Oh, yeah.
places to go do stuff, and so we have to look a little bit further around. They probably didn't up if they lived in Charlotte, Michigan, they probably didn't up and travel to Chicago every other weekend. But they may have once or twice, right? And so if you have any kind of journal or family record or newspaper articles that show where they went and what they did, you can use the Internet Archive to kind of follow them. I have a relative um, who was a Catholic priest who taught at a Jesuit university in Chicago. And so I was able to pull up the course catalogs for the year that he was a teacher and could write down all the courses that he taught,
That's great.
which again isn't like gonna help me like find, more stuff.
No,
Obviously,
no.
he is a Catholic priest. He did not have descendants.
Yeah.
But still you can look and say, wow, look at these classes
Yeah.
that he taught. I wonder how many people he taught and those lives that he touched
Yes.
through the things that he taught and those kind of things. And just kind of helps you understand the scope of his life, the choices that he made, and things like that. It's really kind of a cool way to flesh out someone's life, where it's just really easy for us, if we're locked into genealogist mode of going up and down
Right.
that line and finding more people, finding this, putting in dates and places, and not stopping and adding things to their life to make them real and to make them humans instead of
Yeah,
just
and to
data.
make them people that people want to hear about. That's how you get the younger generation in too, is because you're telling them these stories about these people instead of just saying, well, they were born here and then they died here, and they, so it's so important to get these stories and learn about their lives. What a fun thing for you to find for him. That's great. I love that so much.
I would encourage everyone to bookmark Internet Archive,
Yeah.
and because you're going to go back to it and go back to it and go
That's
back to
right.
it and go back
That's
to it,
right.
because it's
And of course, we will have the link, just in
Yes.
case,
Yep.
just in case, but you can just Google or whatever you use, Internet Archive, and it's going to come right up for you, but we will have the link so people can.
And create the free account too. Like, don't,
yes.
just that's really key to save your
Yeah, save your
searches,
stuff.
to
Mhm.
gain access to some of the more recent stuff on
Yeah.
the book side that you need to be able to check out, to do. And you can just check it out, you can read it right there. There's not like a lag time or a cooling off period. If it's available, they've got it available generally. So you should just be able to instantly grab it and pull it up if it's available. So
Well,
get
yeah.
the free
Yeah,
free account. So
exactly. Well, Dan, thank you so much
Mhm.
for talking to us about Internet Archive. And thank you everybody for your examples. And Mary, thank you for reminding me I need to go on and look there too for the obituary. I appreciate that. So sometimes you just forget about a resource, or you just, you're so focused on, I should be able to find it here, that you forget to look at these other places that are so good. So yeah, thanks everybody for watching. And I would love to hear what you found on Internet Archive, or if you've never used it before and you get on and you find something, please leave it in the comments, because we would love to know what you're finding. And we love to know that we've helped you with your family history research. So thank you everybody for being on, and thank you for your examples. And Dan, it was so good to see you. Have a good trip. You're going out of town for a while, so we hope to see you again before another, 6 months is out. So everybody will be happy to see that you're alive and well. So thank you so much for being here, and everybody else, thank you for your being on the panel and your continued support for GenFriends. And thank you so much for everybody that's watching, and we will see you next time on GenFriends. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.